Welcome. Once again, America, we here. Thank you for coming back for episode 4 of the Reckoning podcast. This week, the Reckoning is international, baby. We talking about Colombia. We talking about politics. I have none other sitting here with me today than Luis Murillo, looking presidential.
Something slight.
Swagged out.
Something slight.
Jordan socks.
Get it out.
With the
Nike
swoosh
and
to
Jordan.
match.
We don't discriminate.
Oh, we don't. It's not a church socks kind of affair, but it is an affair nonetheless.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being here today, agreeing to do
thank
this
you.
thing, man.
Thank you. Hey, and I want to say that I'm glad that you started your podcast. Me and Matt, we went to college together. And I don't know if you remember, I told you, I'm like, why are you in school? Because you got a golden voice. You should be on radio.
Golden voice.
I was like, why are you doing this homework? I'm like, why are you here? Go and get your podcast. Go and get your radio because that's for you.
I've been grinding all my life, all my life.
So I'm glad that you finally started it, man. And it's an honor, that I'm one of the day ones in your podcast because I know it's the beginning of something big.
I said you don't have to be here, but you chose to do it, so I'm very appreciative. But as much as we're here to talk about yourself and your experience, where also your father is doing something rather notable.
Yes.
What's he doing, Luis?
So my father has the privilege to be a candidate for the presidential elections this year in Colombia. We're running as an independent with the political party called Colombia Renaciente. It's an Afro-Colombian ethnic political party. It's a new party. It was launched in 2019. And yeah, so that's what we on.
Oh, that's brand new. Okay. So your dad is from a section in Colombia. It's called El Choco or just Choco.
Yeah, in Spanish it's El Choco, but in English you could say Choco.
It's Choco.
Yes.
And that's on the west side of Colombia.
Yes, the Pacific coast.
Tell me a little bit about that place and why is it special, do you think?
Yeah, so as you said, Choco is a special place in all the sense of the word, from its people, from its biodiversity, to its culture, and to its food. And I really recommend you and everybody who listens to visit, to taste the food. You will not be disappointed. But it's a very special place. The people are very positive, very warm. We have some beautiful environmental sites, from our rivers to our coastlines. A fun fact, Colombia is the only country in South America that has both access to the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. And Choco is the only department, so department is states in Colombia, is the only department that has access to the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. So it's really a special place in all the sense of the word.
Your dad wrote an article it called Choco, the African heart of Colombia. And you use that phrase just talking with me over the Instagram DMs. Why is that? What's going on in El Choco that they make it the African heart?
So first is we have a high population of Afro-Colombians, most in any department in Colombia. And one of the things that amazed me when I moved to the U.S. was the resemblance of Central Africa, specifically the Congo Basin, to Choco. Just not the surroundings of how it physically looks, but the people. It's very similar, it's from the hair shape, right, to everything is very similar, and that always amazed me. And we are more similar as far as physical, like I told you, our environment, to Central Africa than the rest of Colombia. So that's why we pride ourselves in calling us the African heart of Colombia.
Okay. How would you say, because we know there's, in the United States, how black people are treated.
Yes.
Historically regarded as second-class citizens.
Yes.
What is the treatment like of the Afro-Colombians historically, and how has that brought us to today?
So historically, we've been neglected. I think wherever country you're talking about in the Americas, whoever experienced slavery, we have the same experience. Black folks that's speaking. in the sense that we get denied sometimes political rights, economic rights. We look down upon. But Colombia, in a way, comparing to the U.S., it's, for example, in the U.S., in the counties where slavery was practiced most intensely, it tends to be very conservative.
Really?
Right? While in Colombia, the places that practice slavery very intensely tend to be liberal.
Really?
Yeah. And I think I told you this before. Abraham Lincoln, the champion of civil rights, in my opinion, because he opened the door for that fight. He was elected 1860, inaugural 1861. In Colombia in 1861, we had our first black president. 10 years after the abolition of slavery. So we have today, right? It's the same story as sometimes probably being discriminated upon, but we do have a part in our history where I would say we were on top. Like I told you, we had our Obama before Obama was even heard of, So but unfortunately, the reality today is pretty much the same as how it is here in the U.S.
That's interesting. You said the areas where slavery was practiced the most intensely, they're now liberal today. Why is that?
So first, Colombia historically had only two political parties. Now it's different, but most of our history we had the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. So abolition of slavery in Colombia has a different story than in the U.S. So as you know, Abraham Lincoln, my favorite president, by the way.
He's a good one.
He's a good one, yeah. He did it for more economic reasons, right? It's the folks from up north couldn't compete with the plantation owners in the south because they have free labor.
Right.
That contradicts market theory, right? And that's why they decided to abolish slavery, so for fair economic competition and things like that. While in Colombia, it was more of a political calculation by liberal elites to say, if we abolish slavery and we take the credit for it, we will have the loyalty of Afro-Colombians and their votes for the next generation. So that's why a lot of black Afro-Colombians really vote always with the Liberal Party because of that reason.
What is the Afro-Colombian culture like? How have they influenced Colombian society in general?
They have a huge influence, first, mainly with culture, in the sense that we, for example, music, right? We have these two salsa groups, one called El Grupo Nietzsche, another one El Guayacán, that everybody in Colombia loves, right? They have all the classic salsa hits. Not just in Colombia, but throughout Latin America, and the Latinos here, they really like their music, but they're Afro-Colombians.
Wow.
Right? And also, when you look at sports, when you look at our athletes, we're talking about soccer or different types of sports, a lot of them tend to be Afro-Colombian, and they represent us very well in their competitions.
So it's kind of like America in the sense that black music is very popular among white people.
Yeah.
We love the football players, the basketball players.
Yeah.
I don't even have a question associated with that necessarily, but it's an interesting parallel.
Yeah, but it goes back to what I said about the experience of slavery. So what do I mean? We love music, whether you're talking about Afro-Colombians, African Americans, because that's all we had. How are you happy as a slave? You start creating music.
Yeah.
Right? You start beating it up, and then we develop this talent for it. And then as sports, well, we have free labor. We are in the plantation, we are in the mines. So we evolve to be a little, I don't want to say genetically stronger, but it has some impact. It has some content. So I think that could be the connecting point with the U.S. And then the Colombia in the sense of where African Americans in the music and sports, and then Afro-Colombians with music and sports.
I got you. Why do you think Colombia is considered a flawed democracy?
Well, to start off, Colombia technically is the oldest democracy in Latin America. But you're right, it's very flawed. It's very flawed. So like I told you, that golden period that I told you we had with the Afro-Colombians, that we had a black president, we abolished slavery. The country was founded in 1810, the 19th century, right? And in this very progressive era where we extended suffrage rights, where we were more inclusive in political participation, was between 1850 and the 1870s. But then in 1886, Colombia got a new constitution, and it was a very exclusive constitution. They became very exclusive with political participation and things like that. And one of the major things that constitution did was that it took away local elections. So people couldn't vote for their governor or for their mayor or for their council member anymore. So you still had competition in the presidential election, but then the president nominates or appoints the governor, and the governor appoints the mayors, right? And that system stayed until 1988, so over 100 years, right? So that's very undemocratic.
Yeah.
And then when it got decentralized again with the local elections, Colombia had this communist party in 1988 called in English would be the Patriotic Union. And the candidates got systematically assassinated.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they violently took the communist political rights away. Also very undemocratic.
Right.
And Colombia, unfortunately, has violent election cycles, which you can't really sometimes consider that as free elections because you're afraid. So
Intimidation.
yeah. So even though we're the oldest democracy, we have long periods where we have been very undemocratic.
You touched on it a little bit when it came to violence in the elections. I guess I was doing research to prepare for this, and something that I kept seeing was armed conflict in Colombia, people fighting.
Yeah.
What is the nature of that armed conflict, and who is fighting who?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Colombia is a very violent country. So we got our independence in 1810, the 19th century. Independence movement is basically a revolution that by nature is violent, right? And then throughout that whole century, the 19th century, we had a lot of coups. A lot of times you overthrew the government that also by nature is violent, right? And then in the turn from the 19th century to the 20th century, we had a civil war called the War of the Thousand Days. And it started late 1899 and extended all the way to 1902.
Wow.
And it was between the Liberal Party and Conservative Party. Then we had another civil war in 1948, and this time period is called the violence. When you translate, it's called the violence. Again, between the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party.
Interesting.
And they ended the Civil War by coming to an agreement and saying, we will compete for the presidency, right, who will be president, but we will rotate. What does that mean? That every cabinet is always half liberal, half conservative. Also very undemocratic, right?
It don't make no sense.
Yeah, it don't. and this happened in 1950, this agreement. Then the reaction to this agreement was the formation or the creation of Marxist rebel groups, right? We had a whole bunch of left-wing rebel groups, and that was in the 1960s. Then the reaction to the creation of these Marxist group was the creation of paramilitaries, right? So you had the state, the Marxist rebel groups, the paramilitaries fighting each other, and this armed conflict started in 1960s, and it ended with the signing of the peace deal that was formally finished in 2017. And even after the peace deal, ever since the peace deal has been signed, over 1,300 social leaders have been assassinated.
Wow.
Yeah, so Colombia has this very violent history, but the nature of our violence changed in the 80s with the introduction of narco trafficking. So usually it was more political, ideological, right? Conservative, liberal, right wing, left wing. But then when narco trafficking got introduced to Colombia, it became more about who could dominate this industry. So of course they still had the mask of, oh yeah, we're the Marxist group, yeah, we're paramilitary, but
No,
we know
we
what you
selling
after
coke.
for. Yeah, you after the drug routes, you after all this type of stuff. So unfortunately, Colombia has too much of a history with violence, but I have hope that it would change. It would change.
Is it fair to say that your dad and your family has been threatened by
Yeah.
armed groups?
Yeah, but in Colombia, also unfortunately, any politician that has tasted success has been threatened by armed groups because it's strong interest. So, and they make it known that your position is against their interests, and they make it known by threats. So, unfortunately, that's part of the reality of Colombian politics.
So you had to have like steel in your spine.
Yeah,
Making a national run.
yeah. You have to believe in what you want to fight for.
That's very honorable. Say it makes me. What do you think, before we get into specifically the politics of your dad, what he's hoping to accomplish? What do you think Colombia-wide are like the most important issues that the national candidates are focused on?
I don't know if the other candidates are focused on, but I know one pressing issue that Colombia has is inequality, both economic and political inequality. And I think we have reached our limit as far as advancing and developing with this tolerance of inequality. But until we don't face and address this issue, we will stay the same. Like it's we can't be tolerant to it anymore.
Okay. Inequality. Describe just in general your dad's political philosophy and what is he hoping to accomplish by running for president of this fine land.
Yeah. So we're moderate. We're from
Okay.
the center, but not the traditional Colombia leader center, right? We call our political position the popular center. So what does that mean? Our philosophy is we're very progressive when it comes to economic issues. We have zero tolerance against inequality. We believe in redistribution, and we believe in taking care of society's most vulnerable groups, financially vulnerable groups. But socially, we're conservative. We believe in the church. We have strong family values, traditional values, and we're people of faith.
And I guess that resonates with a lot of Colombians, socially conservative, but fiscally liberal.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you feel like your dad is the Afro-Colombian candidate? And what is, I guess, the Afro-Colombian agenda nationwide? I guess you touched on with the inequality, but
Yeah.
what does I guess that's what my question is as far as people who could represent the Afro-Colombians, is your dad that person?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will consider him the. He's not the only Afro-Colombian candidate. There's a woman running, but he is the strongest Afro-Colombian candidate that we have had in a very long time. And also, to go back to your question about what he plans to accomplish, I'm sorry I forgot to answer it, is that he wants to tackle the issues of inequality. He wants to implement the peace deal that is there, and he wants to bring prosperity to all of Colombia, all of the regions. Because the thing about Colombia is that geographically we developed uneven. So what do I mean? That when the Spanish was in Colombia, they focused on the center of the country, right? What we call the colonial center, right? And the regions had lack of state presence, right? It's weak institutions, but the middle of the country always was prosperous. So he calls himself not just the candidate of Afro-Colombians, but the candidate of the regions.
Gotcha.
Because in Colombia is what we call the other Colombia, the forgotten Colombia, that we want to be prosperous too, you know, and he represents those groups. So it's the base is not just Afro-Colombians, is Colombians who have been historically forgotten by the state.
And that includes the indigenous population.
The Amazons, right? All these regions outside of the center of Colombia. Because like I told you, geographically, we developed very uneven.
Yeah, I was reading there was a lot of exploitation of the land.
Yeah.
When it came to
Yeah.
Choco. Your dad was elected governor of Choco at the age of 31, one of the youngest in history, so
Yeah.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Um,
You did your homework, right?
I definitely did. I studied up, baby. I've read everything there was. But how effective was his, I guess I'm thinking of the first term
Yeah.
as governor, because that was like from the late 80s to
So
late 90s.
it was late 90s. Like I told you, the people didn't start electing the governor until late 80s. And so he got elected twice, right? And in the first term, and when he got in 98, he created the framework for human rights. And this was huge because, to give you the political context, when he came to power, it was when the paramilitaries first started coming into Choco.
Really?
And they made the department a place of war. So he declared the territory of Choco as a peace department. And the strategic reason for that is to allow UN peacekeepers to come in Choco and protect Chocuanos, because at that time we didn't have any military bases in Choco. And also he championed women inclusion. 50% of his cabinet were women. That was unheard of. So that was in his first term. And then in his second term, he got elected in 2011. So he came to power in 2012. And what he did was he created leadership programs to train teachers and to send Chocuano students to the best universities of the world for free. He also created the Interior Department. There was no Secretary of Interior before. And he created the Secretary of Health. He created high-level advisors to the governor on issues of institution capacity, education development, and natural disasters emergencies. All of this was an attempt to change the institutional structure of the government to be more transparent. And by the way, in the first 6 months of him being governor, he was the best governor of Colombia. He had an approval rating over 80%.
The dude was popular.
They're very popular.
Okay.
And out of the 30 municipalities that Choco has, he visited 28 of them. And that was also unheard of, because before, the governors didn't really leave the capital.
I got you.
So it was even though he was in the government for a brief period of time, he made a lot of fundamental changes.
That's why I thought it was interesting. Like, I can tell he's highly regarded, very popular, and yet he was stripped of office. In 99, the newspaper said it was not just, it was not right.
It wasn't.
What was the circumstances of that, and what was, I guess, kind of the fallout for Choco and Colombia?
So he got kicked out of the government for the same reason twice, both in 98 and 2012. And it's a very unfair case. So what happened? Before he was elected governor the first time, he was director of this environmental agency in Choco. And at that time, his kindergarten, the roof collapsed in the old kindergarten that he went to in his hometown. Keep in mind that Choco is the second place in the world where it rains the most. So the roof collapsed. So what did he do? He took $2,000 to repair that roof so kindergarten students could go to class without getting wet.
That sounds like it. People can agree with that.
$2,000, which is nothing.
All right.
And that's what they kicked him out twice.
They said
twice. So the second time, I don't remember the first time because I was pretty young. Yeah, I was in kindergarten myself, right? But the second time I was in Choco, it was, people were mad. There was protests on the street because it was unfair. But in Colombia, it didn't really have that much of impact because we are from the forgotten parts of Colombia. I always laugh when I watch Colombian news because everybody watches Colombian news, right? At 7 o'clock, everybody watches TV. Colombia's a big country. And I lie to you not, sometimes they give segments of the traffic in the capital. wow, in the forgotten part of Colombia, there's so much problems going on that should be reported that the country should know about. But instead, we're watching the traffic jam of the capital, So, of course, when they suspend a governor from Choco, it doesn't really make headlines.
Because it's
a forgotten part.
isolated.
Yeah, it's a forgotten part. It's a forgotten part. And then it's just not Choco. It's a lot of departments that get treated the same way.
That's interesting. Your dad was also kidnapped. Talking about armed conflict.
Right.
What was the circumstances of that? Just tell me that story,
Okay.
man. What the heck?
Yeah. It was crazy. Thank God that everything turned out good though. So what happened? He was governor in '98. He got unjustly kicked out. And then we're good people. We do things with good intentions, right? But some illegal armed groups thought that this guy had a lot of money, and it wasn't true. So they started extorting him, requesting, sums of money that we simply did not have.
Right.
And they gave us deadlines. And they said, if you don't meet the first deadline, we're going to kill your children. If you don't meet the second deadline, we're going to kill your wife. And then by the third deadline, we're going to kill you. So the only way to survive was to flee the country. And we fled the country. We came to the U.S. as political refugees.
Wow.
We came to Detroit, the great city of Detroit. Very wonderful
Detroit,
experience.
what?
Yeah. Shout out to Detroit. Very good experience. Then we moved to the DMV, Langley Park, right, PG County, when it was still black. Also, yeah. I had to mention that.
Yeah.
Also, a very nice experience.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Landover Hills, which is also PG County. Very cool experience. But I grew up very humble. So my father went from being governor to being a bouncer of a club. But in his free time, says he really believes in what he does and what he fights for. He was lobbying Congress. So in his free time, he would lobby Congress. He's charismatic, so he made a lot of good connections. And with time, he started moving on up. But growing up, the childhood I remember, it was very simple, but we were happy.
Okay.
Because once you go through those type of experiences, you really appreciate peace. You could be out in the rock, but as long as nobody bothering you, you good, you with your family, that's all that matters. Life is good. So that's that story. And then that was in 2000. Like I told you, he moved up, and then in 2011 he returned back to Colombia to become governor.
For you personally, what was the transition like from coming from Colombia to America? How has that kind of shaped your sense of identity?
So I don't really remember the transition. I was 7 years old.
Okay.
I don't even remember learning English.
Wow.
I don't. Yeah, but it was very nice. I really connected with African American culture because I'm Afro-Colombian, and I saw so many similarities. And we were the same people, right? But I'm in a different country, right? But it was very nice. I love the U.S. because of that, because they accepted you when you had nothing. You had nothing, and they accepted you, and they took you as your own. And like I told you, I grew up in African American communities, neighborhoods, and the love was there. The love was real.
Definitely.
I consider myself sometimes African American because of that.
Yeah, right.
Because they took me in, and that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up. So to me, it was all good. All good. Like, it's very sad. Don't get me wrong. You still have bad memories of that final chapter in Colombia when you were there in the 90s or early 2000s. But I'm really happy that I grew up the way I grew up.
Yeah. Thinking of Choco, and a lot of your dad's writing and policy pushes have had to do with the natural environment.
Yes.
Do you have anything to say about his attachment to the environment, and why is that such a big issue for him?
It's a huge issue because first he was born in the jungle, in the rainforest,
Yeah.
right? And the way he grew up, especially at that time, they learned to live with those unusual circumstances because it's the rainforest, right? It's different, right? And he learned how to take care of nature, coexist with nature, right? And really take care of nature. And when he became Minister of the Environment in 2016, He did a lot. He did a lot for it, and I even wrote some down because it's so much.
Tell
man.
us what's going on.
Yeah, it's so much. It's so much. And this is all in 2 years. It's 2 years. So he tripled the protected areas in Colombia. He created the legal framework for protection of Colombia's patrimony. And this is a big deal because Colombia is the most biodiverse country in the world per square meter.
Yeah.
He created a new model of environment, which includes green markets, carbon markets, and the payments for environmental services to communities. This was the first time communities was getting paid for something that they have always been doing, which is protecting the environment.
Sure.
And he also created the regulation that allowed Colombia to reduce the use of plastic bags by 60%. So in other words, Colombia stopped using over 700 million plastic bags per year. Keep in mind, all this in 2 years. So he really took advantage of being Minister of the Environment, and his legacy still lives on today.
I'll say it.
But my favorite part, man, that I didn't write that down, but it's because I lived it, man.
Yes.
He created what in Spanish called Bosque de la Paz, which is forest of peace, right? And it was a special program that he did with President Santos that basically is, since he was in the government during the peace deal signing, you plant a tree for every victim that was lost during the armed conflict. Their families come and they plant a tree because the tree lives for a very long time and it stays there. So that's what he was doing with communities who were affected most by the violence of the armed conflict, was all the families of the victims. They planted a tree of their loved ones for remembrance.
That's amazing, man. I can tell that you say the love is real.
Yeah.
It seemed like the love is real for your dad, and that relationship is reciprocal. It kind of goes both ways. Clearly, your dad has gained some attention nationwide. He worked with Juan Manuel Santos, president.
Yes.
I guess you talked about a little bit the stuff that they did together. Do you think his relationship with Santos planted maybe a seed that is causing him to run now?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say that we strongly believe that President Santos is the best president in the history of Colombia.
There it is.
Yeah, he transformed. Yeah, he transformed Colombia. The peace deal is very consequential for all the good reasons. And we admire and respect Santos, not only him but his family, and we will always support him. Now, specifically on the decision for us to run, for him to run, we make our own decisions, and we came to our own conclusion. And but like I said, President Santos opened the door for us, and we will always be super appreciative, not just him and his family, but awesome. They have a very good working relationship and personal relationship.
Okay. Yeah, that's something, man. I was just, like I said, she was blown away by how much of a big baller this man is. Would you say, realistically, I know you're biased.
Come on. Hey, we study political science, right? And you did the same training we did. We were taught to detach.
Yeah.
Even if you believe in God, God is not in politics.
But you can't really detach.
Hey, you could. Hey, we're trained by Dr. Descoopta. Don't offend Dr. Descoopta like that.
I hope he's watching.
Yeah, I hope he is too. Yeah, I hope he is too.
Okay. All right. Clearly. All right. Not biased, detached.
Right.
From your perspective, how deep is the support for your dad in Colombia right now? And what do you think his chances are of actually making this thing happen?
All right. So the traditional experts would say it's a long shot, would say underestimate a little bit. But I'll tell you this. Colombia has changed, right? My personal theory is that this is the first truly presidential election that Colombia is going to have.
Really?
Yes. And I'll explain. So we kind of went a little bit with history about how even though we're the oldest democracy, we have some very undemocratic periods of time. And we've always been engulfed by violence. Right? So when you worrying about, you being displaced and about your family's safety, forget politics, forget voting. I'm trying to protect me and my family.
Yeah.
Right? Even though there's still violence today in Colombia, we have a peace deal that could give us hope. And now people are more politically engaged. What do I mean? So in 2017 is when the peace deal got formalized, right? And officially signed and everything. Passed through Congress, it got put into the Constitution. 2017. 2018, we had a presidential election. It was the most voted presidential election in the history of Colombia. Then the election that followed that, which was the 2019 regional election, was the regional election that had the highest voter turnout in the history of Colombia. And then now in this election, this is the first time the Colombian electorate is experiencing primaries. Colombia never had a primary. It was just parties pick their candidates, say this is it, and introduce them to the public. They're having primaries, right? And also so the public is engaged, right? That's no doubt. And I believe that Colombia is going through an electoral realignment in this presidential election. What do I mean? That historically, the most powerful political parties have been the Liberal Party and Conservative Party. This is the first election that they don't have the candidate of their own. They don't have it. And then the guy who's been winning the elections since the beginning of the 21st century is former President Uribe. He is not as strong as he used to be. So his movement is also very fragmented.
Interesting.
And Colombia is a conservative country, and the conservative movement is split, right? Also, when you look at the left is, this is the election where they're the most excited.
Right.
They are pumped up. Never has the left been this excited for a presidential election in Colombia in its history. And then most registered voters in Colombia identify themselves as moderate, as center. So the votes are there. So we're going to see this realignment that we don't know who's going to vote for who really.
Right.
And this is the first time where that other Colombia, that forgotten Colombia, are poised to vote in high numbers. They are going to make their voices heard. The Afro-Colombian community are poised to have the highest voter turnout that they ever had. So it's going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
That the election results, I can guarantee you, is going to be a surprise. And for us to win will be a surprise. So I'm very confident that we will surprise Colombia. We will shock the world. And I'm convinced that the next time I get on your show, I'll be talking to you, of course, as a friend, but also as the son of the president of Colombia.
I believe that.
I believe that too. So because it's something historic is going to happen. You feel it. You feel it on the ground. Sometimes you study political science.
Sure.
It's number says one thing, poll says one thing, but on the ground it's different.
Yeah.
And I always compare it to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Hey, nobody thought that the Soviet Union was going to collapse the way it collapsed. How rapid it did. People don't know. They lost Eastern Europe, but Soviet Union is going to remain strong. But people on the ground, journalists, activists, they all say, hold up. Something is different this time. Something is, and then, government, political scientists like, no, they're still strong. What happened? They collapsed. So Colombia is going through a very historic moment. There's a lot of energy on the ground, and I believe that this election, Colombia will elect for the first time a black president. Because the other black president wasn't elected, right? But this will be the first time where a majority of Colombians will vote and said, this is the president. Afro-Colombian man.
I'll tell you what, man, it seems like, they want to say long shot, but I figure knowing what we know about political science, you got the name recognition nationwide. He's been close with the former president. They know who he was as a minister, and all the streams that you just mentioned seems like it's flowing in y'all's direction. So that's all the questions I had, Mr. Luis.
Thank you.
What's your dad's name? I don't think we ever said it.
Okay, his name is Luis Gilberto Murillo Urrutia.
Y'all better remember
and
that.
if any of y'all Colombian, whether you live in Colombia, outside of Colombia, please vote for us. Vote for change. We will transform Colombia how it deserves to be transformed, and we would take Colombia to that 21st century level that we deserve to be in.
Y'all, man, he said it. He said it. I don't gotta say nothing. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
And good luck to everything.
Yep. See y'all next time, man.